Welcome guys to a new video on this channel. Today we go over quite a heavily requested deck profile, which I really enjoy that you guys really want to see this deck profile, of course. And today it will be a Steam Maiden deck combined with the already previous premium support. So it's a premium Steam Maiden deck. Lots of people were asking, how do you build this deck? How are you going to synergize both of these like feature support and of course with the premium support? And that's why we go into it in depth on this video. Today we just go over the main deck first, then I will go over the G-Zone, then we'll go back to the main deck, explain some things, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you guys have any comments, of course, comment down below and just ask whatever you want. So let's just go over the deck, and I would just go fast through it once first, and then go over the G-Zone and then explain in depth. So if you guys just want to see other explanations, you can go to that part, and for now we'll just go over it. For the main deck we play well V-Star. V-Star is really good. 4 copies of the main Elo, just like you play Steam main deck, so you revolve on playing this as your main grade 3. And 2 copies of Emi. Emi is an old Steam Maiden, but still one of the best. Colossus for your Wincon. The weirdest Steam Maiden that I can think about, really awkward sometimes in V, but it's the main powerhouse in premium. So you play that 4 copies. 3 copies of Naboo to set up the bind zone and sort of like set up an early aggressiveness against your opponent. Still one of the best cards since the beginning of V. And History Maker, yeah, like Time Leap Ancient is so generic that you can still play it. 4 copies of the Grade 1 Steam Maiden. Yeah, nothing really to say about it. Really good, solid on Vanguard Shuffle skill. And then 4 copies of the Steam Maiden PG. Yes, we do have it. There's a very specific reason why I play this card, but we'll go over it later. If I have to explain this, then I will do it later, because this card has already been talked about so much. And 2 copies of Steam Sniper Lishma. So that's really it for the main deck in the sense of normal units. Or nah, not really, because we still have 2 normal units left, which is 2 Tactic Workers. But I mean like for the real main deck, and because this is like actually a starter that we play in the main deck. Then we play 4 Strike Kits because training is nice. 2 just going into Socket because we have space. And just filtering to your hand can be nice when you're breaking a little bit. And then the 1 over trigger, which just counts for a sort of like 7 critical deck. Then we go over the 1 stand. We still have access to it now. We don't really go into this primarily, but if we can, we only need 1 stand trigger to begin with, so that's why I play it with 1 copy. This may seem quite weird, but we play the 4 Steam Maiden draws. Yes, this is a very old draw trigger. And then we can play Hero Guards, because, yeah, of course, we already have the 4 Steam Maidens. So that's really it for the deck. And now we go into the G-Zone and go reverse again. So for G-Zone, we play 3 copies of History Build. Still one of the best strides we got nowadays in the form of multi-attack for the cheapest cost, because Soulless isn't really a cost for this deck. And we play 2 copies of Ragnarok. Can still kill your opponent in certain scenarios. 2 copies of Ragnarok can really synergize with what you want to do and sort of unbreak yourself. 1 copy of Alter Dragon. We'll go into it later. Hanglong, since you can just fetch cards from your bench or try to call them. 1 copy of Sea Breeze. Like, this comes up more in the Time Leap deck in my opinion, but can still be really insane in this current form of it. And now for the G cards, 1 Elishu and 1 copy Dora Chimera, 1 Uluwu, 1 Nirvana, and 2 copies of Warlock. So that's really it for the G-Zone, and now we go back to the main deck and see what we can find there. Okay, and so now we go back to the main deck, and we first go, of course, with the in-depth explanation on the V-Starter. And I don't think I really need to explain this all too much. Like, there's nothing really a G-Starter can do that is better than, of course, this V-Starter additional card. Then for the first choice of this deck, and it's the main reason why you want to play this deck, Steam Maidens. Steam Maiden Elo. why do you want to play Steam Maidens to begin with? It's primarily because of this card. This is your unit, it's your main MP. And this is the card you evolve for one. Like the good things about her, you can make her card on field, she gets you an extra attack, she gets very big on herself, so that's really good at premium already because you can press your opponent quite heavily. The only thing is of course with this, with Steam Maidens, you don't have the arsenal that coins. It's just next stage, head to a hound, gear goofy, and then make so your final character turn can be a little bit less, but you have other potential options of course. The Hedgehog loss is quite big in my opinion because Hedgehog is like really in this meta, but of course Leslie going around and stuff, you really need it. But if you guys still really want to play Steam Maidens, I heavily encourage you guys to do it of course because it's a very fun deck to play. It's very different from all the other Gear Chronicle decks, and that's why I want to showcase you guys how this deck plays and how you do some combos. Like I do this deck probably before the premium collection just to showcase you guys how you can already try and build a deck. It's not, in my opinion, a perfect list in the sense that there's always some tweaking to do. Like for example, this deck really wants to see this great tree multiple times as soon as possible, whatever you want. The problem with that is I don't have any searches just yet, but that's because I made this deck with the intention that it can be upgraded with new support. So whatever cards you get, of course, for this deck, it's really nice to upgrade into. So let's say for example, if you guys want to build the Steam Maiden deck, like for example you have the deck FP, you want to build the premium, but don't really need very expensive old cards to, let's say for example, ditch them later because you play the new cards of course. Also, the cards that come from premium are the cards that are reprinted or will be played in the late deck such as Melon, because of course Melon can be a different topic. But we play 4 copies of this because of her different options and we want to focus on Steam Maiden. Then we have Emi. The reason why we play Emi, like, it's primarily because she's a Steam Maiden and when she's being placed, you can give her great minus too. That's really big because what you can do is, let's say for example, let's for example you have one Emi in your bind zone. So let's say for example you have one in the bind zone and you have your Vanguard chilling here, which is Elo. What you actually can do with the grade 2 is just call the grade 2. The grade 2 is max, use her skill, go into Emi. Emi says grade -2. The Vanguard skill, this text, the Vanguard skill, go into the grade 2, and then this comes from the bind zone of course. Use a skill, bind something, doesn't really matter for now. Then you can use the grade 2 once again, and you go back to the grade 3, and this comes back. With this, you essentially have sort of a mini loop, not really called a loop because you need multiple instances of card that can make it like sort of time leap it. But with this, you essentially can go from the grade 2 to grade 3 to the grade 2 to the grade 3, which is just a really good engine. And that's why we primarily want to play the Emi, because it just does it on itself. You only need to this is why you play her 2 copies, because you only really need 1 in the bind zone because the grade 2 will always call her from the bind zone and it's already good enough. The second we play is just because of the consistency. Let's say for example 1 goes to the damage zone, we can search the second. If you really want to your arsenal, you can just time leap into it or something like that. You have multiple options. This deck is quite difficult to play. I think even more difficult than time leap for now because it's so clunky combos sometimes. The 2 copies of Piano is just because it's a really good finisher, but the lure effect for the entire turn can just make it so your opponent needs to guard with so many cards on hand that they potentially guard for the entire turn, even though your attacks aren't actually that big, but they come in large numbers of attacks. And the grade 2, as I've already explained about, there's another combo which you can do with this grade 2, what makes it so good, and I will just explain it right now. Now let's say for example what I already explained during the grade 3 turn is with, of course, you have your Elo right here as your Vanguard, and you have this or your rearguard circle, and we just have, let's say for example, we have again the Steam Maiden in our bind zone. So what we can do actually is, let's for example this text first, and we go into, of course, the Emi, and then the EMI is a grade 1 from herself because of her skill. Now you have different options. Let's say for example it's on your stride turn. You can of course get history maker on your EMI attacks. Okay, does nothing. Let's say for example you don't use the Vanguard skill first. And you do history maker, this time leaps. Okay, this time leaps, and this goes into the grade 2 that you call from the deck, so it's not from the bind zone. So let's just and this, then we attack with this of course. This goes into the EMI we already had in the bind zone, so as you can see we only need one. EMI attacks, you use the Vanguard circle skill, then we go into this, and then we get the grade 2 back. Bind something from the drop zone of course, attack with this goes to the bind zone, goes into EMI. As you may see, this is already quite some attacks and only by having the Vanguard circle skill and a history maker on the record circle, but you can extend it even further. Okay, so let's go back to the combo once again. This in our bind zone, we have this on the record circle. And let's say for example we have TikTok worker. So that sounds alright. Okay. So we have this in the bind zone of course, so keep that in mind. I will just keep, and we have this on the rearguard circle. Okay, so let's do the combo once again. We attack with this, we use the skill that switches with EMI attacks, and we use for example no skill. So this time history maker attacks, this goes to the bind zone, and this will be called the attack. Then you call a second one. Then this attacks, you use the skill, goes to the bind zone, call EMI. EMI attacks of course, you stick the worker skill, put this into the zone, this goes to the bind zone, you call a third copy. So this is why it's important to have multiple copies of her in the deck, because you want to have one on the field, in your hand, whatever you want, and two in your deck for this combo. Then you attack with this, then use her skill, go into EMI once again, then EMI attacks, use the skill from the Vanguard, call the grade 2 from the bind zone of course, the grade 2 attacks, use his skill, call EMI, and attack with EMI. And then you haven't even done the Vanguard attack yet. So this is like with two cards already, you do a lot of attacks. It's susceptible to having a denial. That's of course very true, but that's why like this deck can't really play around it, so we just do it like this. We have now 3 copies of the grade 2 in your bind zone, which is alright. We have 1 copy of the grade 2, and of course I think you have like 1 extra card in your bind zone because you called one from the bind zone itself. So let's count how many attacks we already had. So we have this in the bind zone. So we started with the grade 2. So the grade 2 attacks, so that's already 1 attack. Then it goes into our grade 3, which is a second attack. Let's say for example we count this attack in. This is the third attack, goes into this. This will be the fourth attack, use its skill. This will be the fifth attack. Then this will be time limited due to TikTok worker. This will be the sixth attack. This goes back, will be the seventh attack. Then use the Vanguard circle skill. This is the 8th attack. Then use his own skill. This is the 9th attack. And then we attack with Vanguard for the 10th. So only with 3 cards on your field and 1 card on your bind zone, you already can make 10 attacks in total, which is, in my opinion, alright. There are quite low numbers because this will hit for 20 or like 14, but can be promoted to a 24, a force marker. So that's how you do the combo, and remind you guys that you need to resolve this -2 grade skill every single turn, just because the reason behind that is because it's a new make. So it's not an automatic ability that you need to resolve. No, yes, you are mandatory to resolve, but you have the option to not give her the -2 grade. So keep that in mind. So that's a little bit of the combo for now, and that's why I will just keep it, because I can go further in how you do certain combos, of course, but I think it's already clear enough for you guys how you do a little bit of the combo for now. Then, so I explained the grade 3 and the grade 2, and we go over, of course, Naboo. Naboo is just a little bit of a draw engine. It just filters through your hand a little bit. Let's for example you have just your starter in your bind zone game, that's like fine and dandy, because it still recycles a card from your hand. And since this card deck can be a little bit tricky, it sort of lets you unbreak for free because it just goes into the soul for no cost otherwise. As I just explained, history maker can be important. The play we just did now, it costs a lot of counterblast. I do agree with that. So we only need really one to be on our field, but you can make choices. You always have a little bit of a counter engine in this deck, so you can always just go for that route. Also, what I explained a little bit in my timely deck profile, what many people ask. That's for example, yes, I show you guys the combo with all the counterblast you get. That's going to be a 5 counterblast, I can do the entire combo. But it really, like a good player will understand that you need to make choices. So let's say for example you have 2 counterblasts, you will find a scenario where you can optimize this 2 counterblasts to your full disposal. It doesn't mean that you need to do the combo with 5 counterblasts all the time already. You just play with the counterblasts you have, and that's really about it. Then this, of course, just very helpful to set up for your bind zone already. But the important thing about this card, let's say for example you go first, it's really important to get a great 0 into the bind zone, especially the Steam Maiden card. But when you go second, and you want to combo, I just explained to you. Now, you can choose to put certain other cards into your bind zone to do a future setup already. Sometimes setting up the trigger, that draw trigger isn't the best play, so that's why like this card in B is always put a grade 0 into the bind zone. In premium it can be a little bit different because you can make certain combos because let's say for example your bind zone is a little bit different in the sense that you put in a brew in there, you put a melon in there, you can make quite some other combos that you cannot do into V. V is quite linear, just do on the combo sake. It's not a very linear deck in my opinion. But in premium you have so much options, and especially when you go second and use your first strike turn, you need to think about what you set up. So then the 4 copies of Arlen. As I already shown you guys, this deck uses a lot of counter. That's why first you want to use this PG to set up a sort of counter. But also what's important about this card is that it's a Steam Maiden. The next support wave, with of course class selection, makes it so you can search out of the top 3 Steam Maidens, and then you can think about running the Steam Maiden PGs. I think Arne will also really increase the price because of that. I don't know the current price of course, but because of that she can be played. I can see her being played far more because of that. And of course she's already a very good PG in that sense because you really need the counters already. So she synergizes with the deck quite much. That's right player. Then the 4 copies of Steam Maiden Melon. You can also just go back to the time to place for history maker, Uwartar, Detective Worker, and Melon. Which what you can also do is that for example you attack with this, and you know what? I will wrap the cards for again. So for example I have the grade 3 here. And I already have GB active. You can do this multiple things, but I will just explain. Let's say for example you have Melon, and let's say for example you have the grade 2 in your bind, so he made a grade 2. So I will just grab it right here. So let's say for example he made a grade 2. Attack with Melon. Melon gains 4k, she's on the force mark, so hits for 21. And you use the Vanguard circle skill, so she will switch in the bind zone. So she will go to the grade 2. You of course bind the card, but Melon's skill will still work. Get you this card, which grabs you, a TikTok worker. As you may already see, this essentially is the same combo I showed you previously. If you, for example, have the grade 3 in your bind zone, you can go from the grade 3 to the grade 2, from the grade 2 to 2. Just like the same combo, and that's why Melon can be great in this deck and why you want to play it at 3, because it also synergizes with, of course, this itself. Then 2 copies of Lishua, and this can be really weird for some people, but this is just to extend the amount of multi-attack you can do. And what I mean by that is, let's say for example, your frontal circles are quite full. So let's say for example you have your Melon on hand, you want to use history making in that single turn, but you also have the grade 2. So how do you do this? I'll explain. So you have your grade B, but once again, find it. It's here. So let's say, for example, you want to use these 3 cards, but you don't really have the space because Maiden wants to attack, History Maker wants to attack, this grade 2 wants to attack. What we do is we have this right here, and what we just have is Lishma behind the Vanguard. We use the space behind the Vanguard, so just attack with this, use the skills whatever you want in the combo. But let's say, for example, this goes back and you get a TikTok workout. If you attack with the Vanguard, first of all, you make it so you empty your soil a little bit, so you can, in the early game, go to a Naboo. It will minus in total 1 card on hand, but it will go to 1 card into Bind Zone, which will be a very specific card. You get a little bit of aggressiveness out, but in this combo, now you can set up the History Maker on the frontal circle. Because of the Lishma that's standing behind your Vanguard. So that's really important because now you essentially use 3 frontal circles where you can attack from, but now you also you used all three of these cards in the same combo, which you couldn't if you didn't play the Lishma. That's why Lishma can be important in the deck, and it can also make it for a little bit of filtering when you do have the countless. I explain maybe some things quite differently because you have so much things to do in this deck. I hope you guys can keep up with it. 2 copies of TikTok Pocket, want to play more, don't really have the space because this deck is already picky enough, but that will hopefully solve with the new support wave from class section. We play quite some crits because the Vanguard can be quite big and getting a crit on it can be quite scary. You of course have the over trigger that you can play, but it doesn't really synergize all that much with this deck because you might go for quite some games you go for Ragnarok Dragon, or not Ragnarok Dragon, I mean Quarkok Dragon, and also on Ragnarok this can make for a 3 crit lethal. 1 Stein trigger, as I have explained earlier, you can still go into the earlier time leap combos. I will suggest going to the time leap video for you guys to understand. Then we have of course this one, as I explained, this is a Steam Maiden draw trigger, so we don't have to play the Urvu, which opens the space up. Just for heal cards, of course. The heal cards are really impactful in this current meta, and you really need to play focus with it. So when you can make space for it, of course, proposal. I want to, of course, like if I had a choice in this deck, I really want to play some sort of a Grid Research or Lost Gear Locate. Fortunately, we don't have the space for it, and also it's for now, it's a quite bricky deck, but it will become less bricky with the newer support from the Steam Maidens, and that will mostly solve quite some things. For the G-Zone History Maker, or History Build actually, as I explained earlier, you still inherit the name from your Vanguard, so all the Steam Maiden cards are still alive, and when you're on the correct Steam Maiden, of course. And what I explained earlier with the grade 2 Steam Maiden, with the Emi, you can still do it because this extends sort of the loop by 1 Soul Blast, which is a super good cost in this deck because you don't really do much counters for, or you don't use much Soul Blast in it. Ragnarok always can still kill unexpectedly when you don't know about it. And 2 copies of Quarkok Dragon. This makes it so you can accelerate your force markers a little bit because you can write your second, like your Elo from the deck. Also, when you misroad, you can just search for Elo. You can make it so you can use the skill on the Vanguard circle. While you have the rearguard on, and you still have a rearguard on your rearguard circle, of course, because you bind 4. So if you have an entire field, you have 1 card left on the field. So that's why I play 2 copies of it. Also, you don't go in the second copy, it's just there because we have space, because we don't play the conjure cards. 1 copy of Alter Dragon. This deck, like, let's for example, you need a counter charge, you can just go into this, makes your field quite big because you have quite some bind zone set up in the late stage of the game. Also, when you brick a little bit and you need some very specific cards in your bind zone, you can try to go into this and hopefully get it in your bind zone before you go into your battle phase. 1 copy of Hanglang. Let's say for example you have some cards stuck in the bind zone, you can just grab it to your hand. Let's say for example you get your PG into the bind zone, you can add it to your hand. There's multiple reasons why I play this, of course. Sea Breeze, well, you really prefer to have the Vanguard circle skill. Sometimes your hand is quite heavily on the time loop cards, and that's why you want to have this card to your disposal, because when you play Time Leap, of course, this beast play can really kill your opponent. Then one copy of the Elishu, just Troll Blast, great cost in this deck. Also, that can become quite a heavy G card in the sense it can get plus 20 shield. Binding 5 is quite, it can be a burden in this deck, but like just plus 5k shield is still nice. And one Pandora Chimera, since we don't have the Hedron play, having the one Pandora Chimera can be still nasty against some decks that don't count for any plays. One Ulu, if you want to send cards back into your deck, because this deck really wants some great pieces sitting in the deck, of course. Warvana to set up Detective Workers, Ulu, whatever you want. Also one of the free cards which gets to the highest shield value. And then 2 copies of Bearlock, because what I have shown you guys with the combo, you enter your turn quite sometimes with a great tree on the field, so putting that back into the bind zone, which is very important, and then getting some shield value of it is just nice deck. So that's it for the deck profile for you guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. I hope it wasn't too like going from place to place, but of course if you guys have any questions, comment down below and I will try to answer as soon as possible. Just see you guys later and goodbye.